Hello and welcome back to Gary's Garage, and in this episode things are starting to get very repetitive. So if you were watching last time, then you will have seen that I finally, after many months of work, got the car outside as it stands. Unfortunately, things didn't really go brilliantly. I was trying to test the coolant system, and idiot here took off the rad cap and threw coolant everywhere, so that nullified the test I was trying to do, which is, does the coolant system leak? But we did manage to get the new 1000cc injectors up and running and the ECU tweaked, and it was idling quite nicely. But then the big problem came when trying to reverse it back into the garage, and something's gone up with the clutch again. That clutch has been a pain in my backside for ages, and it's really starting to get annoying now. So first thing I'm going to do is get the car up in the air and try to have a look through the hole in the bell housing where the clutch fork goes, just to see if I can see what's happened. I've got a good idea as to what's happened, but just to confirm it. And I have a feeling that this lot is going to have to come out again, and I'm going to have to take a closer look at what I'm doing with the clutch. So first thing to do is get the car up in the air as far as I can get it and have a look at what's going on with that clutch. So the conundrum continues. It's up in the air and I have checked out the movement of the clutch and everything seems okay. We've actuated it probably 100 times with it up in the air now, and seems perfect. So I'm not 100% sure what's going on. It could be something to do with when the engine's running and there's that stress of the rotational force of the clutch actually acting on the release bearing. So what I'm going to do, so that I don't gas myself out, is pull it on the axle stands outside and run the engine and get under there and see what's happening with it again. So let's go and do that, because I really do not want to take all this engine and gearbox out again. I really don't. Right, so it still isn't really conclusive. I think what's happening though is with the clutch pushed all the way down, it's actually pushing the clutch cover too far. So there's the fingers on the clutch, on the cover, and the release bearing pushes against those, and that kind of flexes and brings everything out and releases the clamp on the friction disc. And what I think may be happening is that it's pushing it, it's going to a point where it's then released, and then it's pushing too far, and actually rather than the fingers kind of being out like that and then pushed down, I think they're becoming, obviously my hands are exaggerated, but I think that it's becoming like that, and then as I lift off the clutch, it's then got to spring all the way back sort of through the natural level and then back to its resting point. So what I've done is I've just tweaked the clutch pedal slightly so that it sits a little bit further back, which then means that as I press the pedal and it continues to go towards the floor, it should now actually hit the floor sooner, which means that it's not going to push the clutch release bearing quite as far. So hopefully that those fingers on the clutch will go to sort of the point where they're releasing and not go too far. That's the theory. We shall see. Also moving it backwards and forwards, I obviously had to use the brakes, and I definitely need to adjust the front to rear balance, because that is definitely off. I think it's locking up the rears and not the fronts, but I do have that adjustable bar on the pedals so that I can adjust that. Just need to figure out which way I need to go to give more pressure on the front than the rears, but I will figure that one out. And there is definitely a drip of coolant. I have just gone and nipped up the Jubilee clips on the radiator hoses. They could go another turn and a half, so maybe just with it settling and expanding and contracting, that's now got to a point where that had just loosened off and it's now bedding in. I don't know. So yes, it's definitely been an interesting day. I think what I need to do now is let the coolant that has dripped evaporate off, and then I can look at, I'll figure out how to adjust that brake, and we'll see about what the next thing I can do is. But I'm hoping, really hoping, that it was just that clutch going too far, and by adjusting the pedal, and obviously I will put a stop, like a rubber stop on the floor, so that it's not just bashing into the carpet. I'll sort all that properly if this does fix it. Yeah, let's see where we go from here. I've got a couple of things still on my list on the board in front of me, so I'll have a look at those and see what I still need to tweak, and I'll be back with you in a moment. So I have just run it up outside again for probably close to an hour, and almost used all the fuel I've put in it. And I think I've got no leaks on the cooling system. I think it was just those couple of Jubilee clips just needed nipping up. I have not quite got the right hose on the overflow, so that dripped over this side, but all the rest of the stuff over that side, all nice and dry still. And with the clutch pedal adjusted, that definitely is better going in and out of gear. Really, the test is going to be once I can get it back on the road. So, talking about getting it back on the road, we have over here in the UK an annual test, and that checks over some of the safety aspects of the car, makes sure that everything's to a minimum standard, and mine has expired because it's been out off the road for so long. Because of the age of the vehicle, potentially I could consider getting away without one, but the wording says anything that's not substantially modified. I think you could probably class this as substantially modified. So that means it does need an MOT, and even if I had a bog standard car, I would still get it MOT'd once a year, because it is another set of eyes looking over it and checking out things that I could potentially overlook. So even if I did end up with a car that didn't need an MOT legally, I would still get one. And if you've got a car that is old enough in the UK to not have an MOT, personally, I would strongly recommend that you still continue to get an MOT. Mini ran over. So to get an MOT, it's going to need a few things like a windscreen, wipers, lights, windscreen washer, and just a general kind of tidy up and make it slightly less like a bare shell. I don't think it needs anything interior wise other than what I've got, other than figuring out a proper mounting for the hazard light switch. But other than that, as long as there's no particularly sharp edges or anything that's obviously loose, I should be okay. So I don't think I'm going to go to the effort of putting all the rest of the interior in. So I got a little bit carried away and basically finished off putting the dials and switches in. So we've got the new air fuel ratio gauge over there, and down here we've got fuel and water. I've put in the fan, the heater fan, and this little rotary one here is going to be so that I can adjust the amount of traction control that I have, from none to quite a lot. So yeah, the interior's getting there, looking good. So let's move on to the next thing. So I'm about ready to get the windscreen in now, that's it prepped. The theory behind putting in these types of windscreens on ye old cars is fairly simple. You have a rope running inside the rubber channel, and as you put the screen in, you gently tease that rope out and apart, and that lifts the rubber over the edge of the screen surround, and then it kind of just all slots into place. Modern vehicles, the screens are bonded in with a super sticky glue, and they actually form part of the structure of the car, whereas with these in the rubber, not quite so much. So let's see how I get on with getting that in. The theory is easy, in practice though it's generally not always that easy, and given that it's this car, it's probably going to be a downright pain in the bottom. But let's see how we get on. I need that inside. Right, can you push it down from the top? There's just a couple of inches here that haven't come over the... Right, loads of pressure on the top.
What, pushing?
Pushing kind of down and in. Yeah, we're mostly behind the trim, the chrome trim now. Okay, move along a bit. I think we're in. With some help from my glamorous assistant, the windscreen is now in and should stop me getting too cold and wet. So we've got some wipers to put on and the charge cooler system. And then, you know what, I think it might actually be ready to call up the testing station and get an MOT booked. That'll be interesting because obviously, you know, I've done a lot of work on it. I'm fairly confident with what I've done, but another pair of eyes is always a good thing. Sometimes when you do a project car, you're too close to it. You don't see the things that you don't know about, or yeah, you can miss things. It's easy to do, everybody does it, and that is why it's a really good idea, certainly over here, that we have these annual tests that do check quite a lot of the core safety stuff and the overall structure of the car. And I'm happy to take it for an annual test. Very happy. I think it's a great idea, and personally I think that the British government were stupid to remove the requirement for it from older vehicles. Even if they are, you know, owned by enthusiasts and not used very often, there's still things that we as enthusiasts and owners will miss. And we can't test things like braking imbalances and braking inefficiencies ourselves in our home garage very easily. But we could take it down to a test station where they have a roller that tests the brakes, tell you how efficient they are, and if you've got those differences side to side, and especially on vehicles that don't get used very often. Anyway, that's my piece said. I shall step down off of my soapbox and move on. I apologise for the quality and audio difference from now on. My lapel microphone got tangled up as I was doing something away from the car and I've damaged it. But anyway, on to the penultimate thing, which is going to be fitting the charge cooler. And as I said before, I have painted it up. And here it is. And straighten out the fins. So that certainly looks a lot more presentable than it did a little while ago. So I'm going to get this on and finish up doing these pipes and the one down here to the reservoir, and then we should be able to fill that up and get the charge cooler system up and running. Okay, so I have done some wiring on the front end, so let's have a quick double check that everything is working. So, side lights, dip beam, full beam, passing, right indicator, left indicator. So, I have made a phone call and I have booked the car in for an MOT in the morning. So, I'm going to spend the next hour or so just having a quick walk around the car again, just double checking everything, make sure everything that I can think of is tight, make sure that things like the washer jet works okay, fill that up with water, which I haven't done yet, check the wipers and the washer jets are okay and pointing at the right place, go over all the suspension, just make sure everything's tight, and yeah, we shall see what happens in the morning. So I shall see you in the morning. So it is morning and I'm about to head off for an MOT. So let's see how we get on getting there and wish me luck. So good news and bad news. Good news is it passed MOT. So everything I've done as far as the government is concerned is all good, all safe. Everything's tight, everything's to spec. Brilliant. The bad news is I am nearly home after driving it back and the bonnet is up because one of the coil packs is smoking. I was driving along quite happily and then I had some quite horrible smoke come into the car. And yeah, as soon as I turn the ignition on and it tries to power up the ignition coils, smoke. So I now need to go and get the trailer so that I can drag it onto the trailer and take it home on the trailer and pull the inlet manifold off, because of course it's the coil packs that are under the inlet manifold, not the ones that are easily accessible on the passenger side. But it's MOT'd, so it is road legal. And when I get that sorted, I can then go out and continue driving it and getting things sorted. So off to get the trailer. I've just been rescued by my glamorous assistant. She is going to take over duty looking after the car while I go and get the trailer and tow vehicle. So there we are, back home with the car on the trailer. Not really what I wanted, so I'll get it in the garage and have a look and see what's going on with those coil packs. Looks like the connector itself has burnt out, so possibly that this power pin wasn't crimped up brilliantly. Who knows? But that's definitely what was causing the smoke. I've ordered a replacement connector for the coil packs, and unfortunately what I got delivered was not correct, so I'm now waiting for the right one to come. So I've not been able to get the plug back in. And there is one other thing though. When I was driving it to the MOT before the coil pack plug failed, whenever I put any kind of throttle on and put any load on the engine, there was a horrible knocking noise coming, which I think might be the start of the engine failing. If you were watching many months ago, there was that moment where the engine toppled off of the axle stands and went clunk onto the floor. I have a feeling that that has done something to the block and has put something out of alignment. And now possibly big ends or little ends, something certainly rotationally in the engine does not seem happy. At least I think it's the engine, because with no sound deadening and fully rose jointed rear suspension and basically everything pretty much solidly mounted, there's just a lot of noise coming from, well, everywhere while it's driving. So I'm hoping that it's just coming from the back, but I think it's coming from the engine and is just being transmitted through the car generally, and it's just difficult to hear. I was hoping that before this video comes out I would have this coil pack plug back together and I could get the car up in the air and get it under some load without it actually driving along the ground, and just see if I can hear any noises coming closer from the back or the front. But I think it is the front, which means engine out to fix it. So I will try to figure out what I'm going to do with that, and hopefully by next episode I will have an answer one way or the other. So thank you very much for watching, and at least it's roadworthy, legally. Just don't really want to go driving it if this engine is knocking, because that's just going to cause more damage and might turn a repairable engine into a anchor and just scrap. So definitely don't want to do that. So join me next time on Garry's Garage, where we'll figure out what's going on and how we're going to progress. And if you're enjoying what I'm doing and you want to help me out, then please like, subscribe, share, and if you really like it, then you can join me on Patreon. All the links are down in the description. So thank you very much, and see you next time on Garry's Garage. Bye.